Council meeting, the Committee of the Whole meeting, and we've just resumed from our in-camera session. At this time, I would like to confirm the agenda. Are there any emergent items from any councillors tonight? Seeing none, are there? Oh, Councillor Peterson.
I have a very short emergent item that I'd like to bring forward, Your Worship, regarding the Youth Wellness Initiative through the Primary Care Network, and the urgency in this is simply with regards to timely communication.
And where would you see it being?
Wherever you determine, Your Worship.
I will turn to Jennifer to see where that would be the best fit. 7-1? Urgent business. Thank you. I guess the urgent would have been my cue. Thank you, Councillor Corbeil, for always being there for me. Turning to administration, are there any emergent items from administration tonight? Jennifer.
Thank you, Your Worship. There are no emergent items. However, there is an amendment we'd like to make to the agenda, and that is for items 6.5 and 6.6. We'd just like to switch the two around. So 6.6, regional.
We have no delegations tonight. Oh, so we need to have a motion to confirm the agenda as amended. Councillor Corbeil.
I move to confirm the agenda as amended.
Thank you, and I actually caught myself that time. You've all heard the motion from Councillor Corbeil. All in favor? And the motion is carried. We have no delegations tonight. And item 4 in the package is the confirmation of minutes. 4.1, approval of the Committee of the Whole meeting minutes for June 12th, 2019.
Your Worship, I move the Council adopt the June 12th, 2019 Committee of the Whole meeting minutes as presented.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Is there any discussion on her motion? Seeing none, all in favor? And that motion is carried. And I'm looking for a motion to go into Committee of the Whole. Deputy Mayor, and I'd like to point out that Deputy Mayor Montgomery has his deputy badge on in honor of the Calgary Stampede, and the theme of Strathmore is kind of a western town. So welcome back, Deputy.
I was told it looked bigger when Councillor Bauer saw it online. So.
It did look bigger when we ordered it online. Is that what you're saying? Oh, that's right. I forgot. So, Deputy Mayor Bauer, Deputy Mayor Montgomery, would you like to make your motion?
Sure. I will move that we go into Committee of the Whole.
Thank you for that motion. You've all heard the motion. All in favor? And we're going into Committee of the Whole now. Unfinished business, item 5. I don't believe we have any unfinished business. So we go on to item 6, items from administration. 6.1, Community Investment Fund, the new model, which is found on page 8 of our package. And Mr. Pretzlaff, welcome tonight.
Thank you, Your Worship and Council. Oh, look at that. Wow, this wasn't all this animation wasn't what I anticipated, so that's why I apologize for that, Your Worship and Council. I'm here today to discuss the Community Investment Fund, the CIF as we know it, and talk about some potential changes that administration is considering based on the support or recommendations from Council. Obviously, everybody here is aware of the Community Investment Fund and its purpose to support local non-for-profit organizations. I believe the fund, this program started in 2016, and there was annually $20,000 put towards grants and this sort of stuff. Some of the challenges that I've seen, that we've seen administrating the program since its inception, is to talk about the scope of the program, talk about some of the gaps, and some of the lack of clarity that's where do people fit into this model, and some of the challenges administration has faced as a result of that. Wow. Okay. So I'll just quickly jump through all the animation. Administration began researching similar programs that other municipalities have. The CIF program. They just model it or call it something different. So kind of aimed it at these higher level events to support unique recreational and cultural events. We feel a maximum of 2 years. It's based on some of our research. This would allow new events to start, give them some seed money, if you will, some support money in their first or second year, and then they'd be up on their own. So we're not continually supporting events such as this. Obviously, to create unique social experiences that connect visitors and residents, and then to create increase civic pride through community celebrations. One of the things that we've, one of our research is block parties or something like that, where we would provide some support for neighborhoods or things like that to organize a block party for their neighbors and things like that. This program exists within the city of Calgary. Strathcona County has a very similar program. For these events, we're talking small events, grants under $5,000. Oh, look, no animation. Yeah, so under the family and social stream, these are projects that fit directly or within the FCSS stream. There would be no changes to the current process. The two existing sources of funding are FCS grants and United Way grants. So we're not proposing any changes here. We're just directing these type of family and social programs directly into this stream, helping with the clarity so people are applying for the right stuff. Minor capital, this is one that through Parkland County has, where they would support associations with capital costs. Some of the priorities, as you are seeing there, are obviously fire and safety and health, preventive maintenance, and then renovations. Through those last couple of years, we've seen a couple applicants that have come directly to council, whether it's the Strathmore Library or the Gymnastics Club. These are associations that, if this was supported through council, would fall under this specific stream. Economic development. Wow, this is really butchered. I apologize. Economic development stream. This is for for-profit businesses. Right now, under the current CIF program, for-profit businesses don't qualify. One of the events that we had is the Stick Around Downtown. This would fall directly under this stream. In consultation with Thomas's group here, these are some of the proposed elements that this stream would include. A 50-50 matching. It must be established organization, just can't be a one-off businesses. The application would include these elements and things like that. It would include some specific expenses, marketing and things like that. Partnerships obviously is necessary, and then in-kind support from administration would also be included in that. The community programs. This is one to support associations to try new programs or improve existing ones. Priority funding would go to programs that fulfill a need, and those focus on children and families. They must be open to the public. So if a church group or something like that is interested in applying, again, it must be open to the public. It's not for any specific association exclusively. Obviously, there's some funding that would be limited to that, and we look at some potential applicants that we could fall under the stream are Happy Cat, the Wheatland Society of Arts, and the Celebration of Life of Lights. One of the elements that we're struggled with within the CIF program is our committee structure. It's been very challenging since I've been here to get a consistent meeting time with our committee. One of the challenges that the committee has identified is that because we have 3 or 4 intakes of applications, they don't know what their schedules are going to be, from week to week or month to month. So by establishing a firmer set of committee members, as well as opening up to a larger group, we may be able to deal with any of the potential conflicts that we've been faced the last couple of years with just applicants and the potential conflicts, as well as people not being on there. Being able to attend, I should say. Some of the recommendations, and there was no consistency in the municipalities that we looked at in terms of how these funds were awarded. Some were awarded specifically on the direction of administration. Some have a committee. One of the things that we discussed internally here is that if there's going to be more than one application, maybe we could have one committee that reviews all these sort of applications for all existing grants and things like that. And questions that we would ask council for their feedback on is, does council want to choose to have a seat on this committee, grant review committee, and should the committee include members at large? Obviously, that opens up for potential conflict of interest, but it's, a wider scope that maybe if we have a larger group of committee members, that maybe somebody can abstain and go from there. One of the challenges, obviously, would be the implementation of such a program. How we would propose this is an application process for 2021 and beyond, recognizing that the CIF program would be rebranded under this new one. Is that we would act for the first year for 2020, we would have in reality two intakes, one beginning in 2021 or in 2020. And closing in April. This would allow us both to budget for this sort of intakes and award it, and then we could start the whole process anew with some better communication, more communication to those applicants out there. Obviously as I says there, for 2020, propose an intake in Q4 for this year, and that again would allow us to make all the necessary budget applications. The one exception for this would be no capital projects. It'd be very, obviously we can't budget for that within this year. And then moving forward that, we would deal with that based on an annual intake of once a year. This would allow us to, with the similar sort of timelines, we would be able to award things in April and June and propose review any applications in preparation for the budget process later in that fall. The next steps, if council would support this direction, is obviously a policy statement, some refined definitions and evaluation processes, policy elements including the streams with criteria and eligibility. We would also look to review our facility donations and our donation policy as a whole to try to align them to our new program. And I guess that's it for me. So I would open back up to your worship and council for feedback and questions.
Thank you for your presentation, Mark, and the efforts you've put in. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Worship. Thank you for doing this, Mark. I think this is exactly what we need to do. I have a couple of questions about, is it possible to even work with another community so that we would look at their applicants and they look at ours? I'm just trying to avoid a conflict of interest. Say, even the Banff, like you looked at theirs, like would we have our committee look at theirs applications that they have, and we could look at their applications and kind of do a trade?
To see whether their applicants would review our applications?
Yeah, and we could review theirs. I'm just trying to avoid a conflict of interest because I don't like saying that the volunteers that we have for our board members can't vote because, obviously, like we've had a couple that have put in applications. But if we could avoid it at all costs, like there wouldn't be a conflict there.
I didn't ask those specific questions. That's something we could definitely identify with a neighboring municipality or region. I think one of the potential challenges is that we're asking somebody who doesn't understand how our
it's something that
works.
It would be something that have to be communicated and be very specific in our ones, just as they would have to be in theirs, right? Yeah. This, like, we would have to have, which I think we need to have anyways, and nailed down, because I'm not even sure if our committee understands the direction and the steps and the reason that we have the steps. Like like the financial one I think is a big one. I don't think that the reasoning behind having them is just to make sure that they're financially stable and this event will happen, whereas like it's not whether they can or can't afford it. You know what I mean? Like I just think that we need to have a little bit more clear direction for them. But
yeah, I would echo those comments. I think that's where the committee struggled and oversaw it or been a part of it the last couple of years.
Right.
We spoke about the lack of clarity and scope of the program, and I think that's some of the things that we've identified as a challenge. And our goal would, whatever it may be, would be that we would we would try to nail down those things a little tighter so that there's clear definitions of what the expectations of the committee and this program would be.
Right, because I even know one member didn't even know that there was a limit. You know, little things like that, like, it just, but anyway, I thank you for this.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. Councillor Sobel.
Yes, thank you for this, Mark. It is a real difficult situation, but it's such a, I emphasize that it's such an important one. We, as a council, we so support some of the projects that are being taken on by volunteer groups and groups in our community, and we feel it's a responsibility to assist them in any way we can within reason. And I guess that's the bottom line of this thing is within reason. So a couple of questions I have for you. First of all, I'm going to hopefully assume that with the different streams that you now have, which if I understand this correctly, you have basically 4 streams that this committee would deal with, the 5th being the FCSS, which would go directly to them. But the 4 streams, they would, an applicant could possibly be involved in more than one stream, but they would only be allowed to put in an application under one stream.
Yes.
One set of
yeah,
money
through
or
the chair, that's
one pot of money.
that's one of the items that we would include in our application, is that whether it's also from the town or from another municipality, or you
Sure.
would only be allowed for one, be applying for money from one stream or whatever it may be. As I forgot to mention in my haste, we've created this little bit of a flow chart to help what we hope to answer some of those questions in
and
terms
I
of
didn't look
directing
at it.
people to the right appropriate streams. We envision something similar to this being posted on our website, so that it can direct people so that they apply to the appropriate stream. We're hopeful that much of the applications, the process can be streamlined into one, as opposed to doing 3 or 4 different applications depending on the streams. Obviously, some streams require a little bit more detail. Like I said, we're envisioning this flow chart directing people to the appropriate stream, and that way that would help with some of the clarity.
Okay, and Recreation and Culture has got a note that it's for grants under $5,000. Is that the same, Mark, as for the other 3 streams?
No, these are just proposals.
Yeah.
We felt that this would, for minor capital and things like that, one of the suggestions we had was $25,000.
Okay.
Recognizing that for $5,000, you can't do a lot of renovations or things like that. So these are some of the ones that we are suggesting, but by no means we're tied to them. These are recommendations.
So when you say it's projects may be covered up to 50% of the cost of the project.
Correct.
So there's a limit to how much we would
Yes, what we would
contribute to
propose, if council is supportive of this direction, is that we would come in back in September with some defined parameters as to what each of the different streams, and a maximum amount that every stream would be eligible for.
Mm-hmm.
And, minor capital for one would be maximum of $25,000, with 50% being matched by the association or something like that.
Okay, and the communities that you compared us to or received additional information from, specifically the ones I'm interested in is perhaps Canmore, Banff and High River. Did you determine what amount of money they played in the sandbox with?
It varies from
Yeah.
each of the ones. So yes, we've kind of done a little bit of some research as to, we don't know what their pot exists
That's
of.
what I was interested.
So we'd have to do some more in-depth research and speak to them directly to say, what does your pot consist of every year from a budgetary standpoint?
Thank you.
but-
You'll be doing that?
Correct.
Thanks. And my last comment would be, I support Councillor Corbeil in that concept of exchanging. I think it's important to have and I'm not sure how important it is for the other set of eyes to really have a feel of what's going on, because it's basically they're looking at criteria. The criteria has to be filled. And with that in mind, if that doesn't work, my suggestion would be that this be limited to administration and perhaps a member of council. But I'm not sure that I want to go anywhere else with that. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mark, can I get you to go back to the community program one? And just, I think I missed something that you said in regard to that. You didn't put a cost on that, attached to that?
No, these are, again, just some of the resources that we found here.
And this would be the one time a year, one a year?
All our what we would propose here. I need a Chuck to help me and bail me out here. What we would propose is a one-time application for
Right.
all our applicants.
Right.
This would allow us both to
Budget it, right.
and so we would know what these true costs are on an annual basis. It's a very similar program. It exists from the provincial government, the Community Facilities Enhancement Program.
Exactly.
And they have two periods, but what we would look at is one, and so that would allow us, if the applications are received by April, we can, put it into the calendars of whomever's committee is part of this committee. They know this well in advance that by July 1st or so, we meet, then we award the money as following, and start to review our new applications and budget accordingly.
One of the, I really appreciate that, and I was just going to say that I think the model that the Community Enhancement Program uses is one that fits certain parts of this really, really well, others not maybe so much. And so following from that, I don't know that I'd want to enter into agreements with other communities, because then they would hate us just like you hate us because, we kept overturning everything you did. And so it's not useful, and so I would go back to saying, just like Councillor Corbeil and Sobel said, there has to be some kind of a third-party sensibility around this, and I'd be very happy if staff did this, and if we had an appeal process, I guess, then it would be a committee of council or something. I would be very, very happy to see that. I also think that in every one of these, one of the things that I saw at Strathcona County was that they had a pretty well-defined idea around monetizing the community program partnerships. So if they were going to give you money, then you had to show in a monetized process how that was going to benefit community specifically. So it really held everybody accountable. And I think about the MOUs that our CAO has generated in this community with Trent's help and several other people. And those programs, there've been a lot of oversight, and they are able to show be definitive in how it how it's monetized into, how it brings value added into community, whether it's by volunteerism or a program subsidy. And so I really, really would appreciate that being a part of it. And I think putting it in the purview of staff is a good thing to do. And hopefully you forgive us. Because I know it hasn't been an easy run. And you've done well in spite of it, and the programs that have come out of it have certainly proven valuable.
Well, through the chair, I appreciate the kind words, and the committee did a lot of the hard work themselves, and I think you're right, the Strathcona County, and that's why one of the municipalities we chose, they had a very good in-depth program as such, and what we're hoping is, obviously that may not work within our community, but elements may help us generate to the point where we can work on one and refine our process to the point where we're the model for everybody else.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson, and thank you, Mark, for that. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to know, please, Mark, when are the busiest times that you receive requests during the year? If you were to look back, does it happen at a certain amount of time, certain time period?
Yeah, through the chair, I can only obviously give you, the 2 years that I've been here. My first year in 2018, it seemed to be spread throughout, and the funds that were allocated seemed to last all year. This past year, we had a big influx because I think people recognized that there is a limited amount, or those people who reapplied understood the process and didn't want to ensure they missed out. So I think based on from 2018 to 2019, our biggest influx came in Q1, the first quarter of the year. So that's one of the reasons why we kind of earmarked those dates. January 1st is a nice start to a new year, and that's where our new applications would receive. And recognizing that, there's still be some challenges forming a committee over the summer and things like that, but in terms of our budget cycle, I think that's one that would allow us to have plenty of time to evaluate all our applications, understand if we had to go back with questions, and still budget accordingly.
Thank you, Mark. When you come back to us in the next time, do you mind please putting together a list of the nonprofit charities that have already come to us for money so that we can see who has received money? And then also just a list of, over the years, who gets repeated money. So who is in the budget to receive money every year now? Because I know that we've kind of changed things, especially for the Celebration of Lights, where they used to come to us for a CIF grant and now they get a number of, like a set amount.
Yeah.
Could we have a list of that?
Yeah, we can definitely put together a list of previous CIF applicants, as well as the Celebration of Light, who have now gone a different way of accessing support through council.
Okay, and then do the people that access a CIF grant come back to us to let us know if their event is successful and how they impacted us?
We do have a reporting mechanism right now where they're asked to report, complete a quick, I think it's a 2 or 3 page report based on where the money is going, where it was spent, how many participants, how many volunteers, things like that. It's right now, it is on our website that anyone can access the form. And then what I found and what we've been trying to do moving forward is when we've had those applicants that have reapplied, include their final report as a part of their new application, so we know where the money went. One of the challenges we faced last year, I think, was we had no way to figure out exactly where they spent the money on, or how they spent the money, or the number of people that were impacted by their event. So this is one thing that we've started now for 2019, it'll end of 2018 as well, to figure out exactly, to get a final report on how things are going.
I would really like to see that too. I didn't know that was on the website, so thank you. And do the people that receive continuous amounts also report back to us?
That's correct, through that final report.
They all do?
Yes, well,
Okay.
they're supposed to. One of the conditions that we're talking about, ensuring that those conditions are in there for this new program, should it be supported, is that they have to complete that one. If there's any missing documentation from a previous year, they're not eligible.
Okay.
So the onus would be on them to ensure that they report.
And you've done an excellent job of outlining the process of where everyone's going to go if they're looking for some amounts for the CIF grant. But I'm not sure if you are also going to look at the actual application form and see if that needs to be revamped. Is that part of this process as well?
Yes, that's something, if council supports this direction of the 4 or 5 streams, give or take, we would review our entire application process, refine it if possible, because obviously some of the information is still necessary. Ideally, have one application for all 4 or 5 streams, but in reality, we're probably looking at a couple applications, because the capital one would be very different than a one for a community program, would be very different from a one for economic development. So our goal would then be working with those various partners. The CIF one, there's no real application that process already exists. Excuse me. So we'd be looking to refine that process and borrowing from others on how their application process, take what we like, figure out one of the challenges that we may, based on our historical information, and try to refine an application process that would work for us.
And I just have one more question, Your Worship, please.
Stacking.
I know, it is. I don't normally do this, but we have not specified, is this going to be used, is the event going to be done in Strathmore or in Wheatland County? And there were a couple instances where people came to us and we weren't really sure of the economic impact. Could that be also considered in this process?
That's one of the questions we'd be looking for council's support and direction. Obviously, we have had applications that are applicants that are just outside our borders that may still impact, Strathmore community. So that's one where we'd be looking for council for some direction to say, should we only support events that are within our boundaries, or should we extend it beyond that? So again, those are some of the feedback, and what I would ask or what I would request from council is if those sort of will, if there's questions like that, or would you support this, that they be directed so that when we come forward in September or later in the fall, then that we can address some of those issues directly.
Okay, thank you very much, Mark.
Councillor Bauer. Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Just before I return to Councillor Corbeil, I just had a question and a comment, and that is, if we do go for this change, we need to ensure that there's a smooth transition to this new approach. And I know Carla and her communications department are very capable. We'd have to make sure that we really get that word out to the people in the public that it's going to be a new system, a new approach. And my question is to help with that smooth transition, is there any merit in having, in the first year at least, is there any merit in having 2 intakes and approvals? And that way, if you get a grouping of people who aren't quite ready or missed out on some information, they would still have a chance to apply at the halfway year mark.
Yes, it's definitely something we can consider. It's a challenge. It's something easy for us to do, to amend. Like I said, we're not sold on any of these things. We're looking for council's recommendations and support. The challenge would come from a budgetary standpoint.
Yeah, and my only concern is if we do this once a year intake, I'm fine with that too. We just have to make sure the word is really well communicated out to people so that, people often don't read the materials that we sometimes get out there, not to put you down, Strathmore, but sometimes things don't get read. We would want to make sure that nobody falls through the cracks because they missed out on something.
Yeah, we would, through the chair, we would definitely anticipate a collaborative agreement with, or consultation with communications to ensure that the word is well spread, that we have a new program, there's changes to it, here are some of the changes, and it's important for this year that you apply early, and moving forward, the application process opens and closes, and the dates are well announced.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Your Worship. I just have, I had my own question, but following that, I have a quick comment. There are some of these events you don't know about a year in advance. That's the only issue that I would find with that is, because, say provincials, like they're not awarded, until a certain time. And that, it's not fair that they would miss out on the event because of our dates. It's a great thing to strive to have in our town, and I wouldn't feel that would be very fair. But anyway, my question though is, with these 5 little categories, are you going to be specifying a budget amount for each? I'm assuming because, we right now are $20,000, and when you're talking about capital 25, like that's more. So is that something that you would be looking
Through the chair,
at?
so using the minor capital stream as an example, we have an application hypothetically from Association X that are asking for $50,000 or whatever, 25,000, I should say, and they would then be applying for that. We would know that they were successful in by early June, July, and then we could budget for that next year, exactly.
Okay.
So that we could see, they wouldn't get the money within that first year hypothetically, they would get it in January, so when the budget is determined.
So are you thinking that you would have different amounts for each of the 5 categories?
Yeah,
That
so
was my
the
question.
minor capital, for example, would be
Yeah.
based on the successful applicants.
Okay.
So we would know what that is. FCSS, we would, likewise with any of the community programs, because we would entertain the structured MOU,
Yep.
that we would be knowing well in advance what their budget was.
Okay.
The one that would be the unknown element is no different than like the recreation culture stream, which is existing right now within the CIF. So, what that amount is, whether it's 20, 15, et cetera.
Okay.
We would know that in a year, and then that would allow us to reevaluate it come midstream. Just in terms of your other question, I can't remember, you just based it off the mayor's one here.
It was just about provincials, like sometimes
yeah.
events and stuff like that
So
were not awarded
that's
until
why
after.
we determined that interprovincial and national and international competitions, because those are awarded well in advance of a year, typically. Western Canadians, for example, is one that they were, but they still would have known that in the first quarter of the year. They applied for the CIF application and got them for the fall. So you're right, there could be some that slipped through the cracks there, which is why, we could review those type of categories. One of the suggestions from the economic development was to remove sport tourism from a category entirely and have it fall under the economic development stream as opposed to the recreation and culture one.
Because as funny as it is, like Grayson will have provincials at the end of the month and we could be hosting.
Yeah.
We don't know yet.
Yeah, so that's why we wanted to take provincials out of it, more
Yeah.
as at the higher level.
Yeah.
Because it attracts more than just, Alberta type of thing. But again, these are all suggestions and we're looking for support from council and recommendations going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Corbeil. Thank you very much for your report, Mark, and the thoroughness that you've done it in. Do you know when this is coming to us as far as more consideration and approval?
What I would be requesting from council is any feedback or any thoughts regarding, some of the questions that I've taken note of. Well, somebody has taken note of. And we'll be rephrasing that and redrafting our process. So ideally, we'll come in the fall based on budget as well. And if we have support from council with these streams, then we'll be moving forward, going that way.
Okay, thank you. And councillors, I guess we could send emails through our CAO, James, to get them to Mark, and then we could look at that. Councillor Sobel.
Just wondering if it would be appropriate, Your Worship, to have Mark send council the questions you need answers to. I think there's a number of them.
Yep.
And there may be more yet coming, and if there was a set of questions, and then we can just respond.
That'd be great.
to him, yeah.
Thank you very much, Your Worship.
That's
Council.
good, thanks. Good point, Councillor Sobel. And thank you again, Mark. Which brings us to item 6.2, the emergency management exercise update. Now, this is not the one that Tom Sobel was going to put you through?
Not yet.
Okay, so that exercise update for you and Bass is later.
I'm just providing you a handout that you can.
Perfect.
You're having a mask now,
Bass, you're coming up to join Mr. West as well. And welcome this evening to Trent and Bass.
Emotional support. Emotional support. After that exercise, I need emotional support. What we shared with you just now is just a handout of the exercise that we undertook last Thursday. Developed by Catherine with support of Randy Tiller, who is the Alberta Emergency Management Agency representative for our area and also a Strathmore resident. So it just runs you through some of the things, what the exercise was, how evil Catherine and Randy were, and I mean evil. I guess from my perspective, and we'll keep it fairly short, and I'll turn it over to Bass, who is one of our deputy directors of emergency management as well. It was an exceptionally large exercise with a number of learnings, more internal than external, more educational than requiring additional funding. We didn't find anything that was like, oh my goodness, we got to put something in the budget. It was a really big exercise. The strategies and the inputs were absolutely brutal. And for the participants, it was a massive challenge. So in that light, it was really good. It identified to me as the Director of Emergency Management that we need to do this exercise every year for as far as I can see, for us to continue to get good. The one learning that came very quickly to me in the exercise was we need to share our ICS training with our partners, not just internally to our staff, but also the people that are going to be involved in any type of emergency. We thought we were doing that, but it needs to get much bigger, and I'm talking people like the Ag Society and EPCOR and those kind of participants. Because in an event like this, sometimes uniform command can work really, really well. But not if everyone is at a different level of experience and knowledge when it comes to emergency management and management by objective versus management by getting things done. And fortunately for me, I had Bass there, and he, after about 45 minutes, he pulled me aside and said, what are you doing? Stop, because I completely lost track. I went into unified command, and then my partners were unified with me, and I started doing things instead of managing by objective, and that was a big learning, and a big help for me as far as involving more our partners in the community, and working and doing these things as frequently as possible. I was thinking of 2020 being a bit of a take a break, because we've been pushing real hard with the emergency management the last couple of 3 years. That's not going to happen. We're going to continue to be really hard and really relentless, and very targeted in some instances in how and who we're working with as far as our exercises are concerned. And I think that also there's a little bit more opportunity for council observing some of these exercises while we're all learning to be part of it. So, and now I'll let Bass talk, because he was an observer, and it worked out really well for me.
Yeah. So one of the couple of points. I think the town deserves some credit in running an exercise of this nature. For those of us that have been around town for a long period of time, we haven't run an exercise like this for a long, long time. Don't know, but I would venture 10+ years that we've actually tested kind of our plan. So it was a good first step. The scenario that was presented is very realistic for this area. For those of you that have some of the municipal history, this is something we faced a number of years ago with the potential tornado coming into the ag grounds during Ag Society days. So it's very realistic. The things that Trent mentioned are starting points, and I think that's the key. The only way to get better at this is to practice and to practice and to practice, and that's I think one of the realizations that we came after is, even though we've done a lot, and we've done a lot of training and a lot of reinforcing of the concepts of ICS, Incident Command System, we need to practice that, and we need to practice with the partners that are going to be showing up. As council is very aware, we don't get to plan these things for when they happen. You don't get to plan who's around. So you need to have a support structure of folks that can step up to the plate and do this stuff. It's great to do the exercises and invite people, and it's convenient on their calendar to do it, but reality is, on an August long weekend, how many of those folks that are trained are going to be available to do this? And in my experience, reality is there's maybe only 30% of those folks, and that's a challenge with what we have, unless you put full-time people there all the time, which isn't reality. That's not going to fix. So the only way we can do that is to further educate and get people involved and understand that. So in talking with Trent after the fact, we need to do more of these, maybe not on a grander scale, maybe in a smaller scale with some of the sectional chiefs. We just do smaller exercises. We know the type of incidents we're going to have in this community based on history. Likely going to be a weather event, whether it's a tornado or whether it's a snow event in the fall or winter or spring, or summer. Yeah, we never know. But we know those kinds of events are going to happen, so we get an opportunity to practice with that, and that's where we build that organizational capability for the town. So to me, this is step one of a longer process, but it was great to have the involvement of everybody in the community and to test it. The only way to get better is to do it.
So in conclusion, I just want, and for the public who can hear my voice, we are very well prepared. We are a solid organization, and we can deal with 99% of any of the emergencies that would come our way. This exercise was catastrophically, phenomenally big, and we're going to get better at the bigger organizational exercises and be able to start nibbling at that last 1% with our partner involvement. So that's the message that we do want to leave you with, and we did want to share this big exercise because it was also a measured exercise by the province. This is our 1 in 4. Every 4 years we need to do something like this, but we're going to do it annually at about the same time, and maybe scale back on the number of buildings and properties and animals and fires and everything else that was taking place during this exercise.
Well, thank you very much, gentlemen, for your report. Are there any questions or comments? Councillor Sobel?
Thank you, and, yeah, you can't, these are just so valuable, and the learning process is so great on them, and you're absolutely right, this is what makes things go smoother the next time and when the real time happens. So one of the, I was really, I appreciated your comments, especially in regards to the importance of knowing your partners and making sure that they're educated and everybody's on the same page. One of the problems, of course, you face, and you know this, is that the people that you're dealing with, their faces change. People get transferred, they quit, they retire, on and on we go, and who you're dealing with on Monday may not be who you're dealing with on Friday. It's my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you're the emergency management coordinator, who is yet to be hired, if that's correct? That's
Under the
Yes.
Land Regional Emergency Management
Yes.
Plan, yes.
will be a great resource in regards to identifying and keeping the partners for emergency services and management up to date. Do you know when that's going to happen? Do we have an idea yet?
Through the chair, we actually are planning on bringing all of us to all of our councils in September,
Okay.
October, the bylaws agreements
Mm-hmm.
and some of the recommendations individually to our councils
Okay.
for approval, and then the establishment of the Emergency Advisory Committee after that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel. Thank you again for your presentation and the time and efforts you put in. I'm very appreciative of this because we as politicians, we come to rely on the people who are the experts, and these are the type of exercises that make you become experts. So thank you for that. Much appreciated.
Appreciate you.
Better not be a tornado in the long run.
That's right.
Saturday or August.
Oh, no. Yeah. All right, that brings us to item 6.3, the municipal development plan update. Welcome, Justin.
Thank you. We do have a presentation if council would like some. Seeing one nod? Yes?
You bet.
Great. Ready? Super quick? All good? Okay. Good evening, Council, and thank you for the time today. We're excited to present an update of all the MDP work that's been going on for the past 6 months or so. Have Cameron Thompson with me as well, and he'll be giving a very quick update on some of the engagement work that he's been involved in as well. So we've just got a very quick slide here just to give Council an update in terms of the MDP work plan and the timelines. I've basically broken this up into 3 sections: research, engagement, and then implementation. The research for some of our work, as well as some of the economic development work, began in December 2018. As you know, we hired HOK, who did come and give an update to Council. They did a work on some background reviews, baseline datas, and some key stakeholder and also developer interviews. We have worked with them very diligently since that time to refine the report and to make it more meaningful and informative to us as we move forward. The intent was always for that to be baseline data for us to move forward with the engagement process. So that report was completed in May. From that, we decided to pull out some really critical, what we called emerging opportunities. So and from those, we wanted to then pull out some of the really key guiding principles to help inform the MDP and the economic development strategy. So last month, as you know, that we held an emerging opportunities event, which we'll give a quick summary of. And we're in the portion now that we're calling the engagement stage from now until September or October, kind of understanding that summer is obviously a tough time sometimes to do some engagement. So during the next 4 to 5 months or so, we'll be doing some more engagement online, hosting special events and pop-up events, going back to the various stakeholders who came to the event. We'll also be doing a downtown redevelopment plan session in September, working with economic development, and as well if council is open and are interested to do more of a focused one-to-one workshop with you in order to gain your feedback. And then the final stage would be the implementation, actually writing the plans and going through the draft. So I just wanted to pick out I guess, a key portion of the HOK report. As I said, it's quite detailed, and I'm not going to walk through it. But the Strathmore advantage is really critical for us to understand as to what really separates us, and really what are our key strengths, and what do we want to continue building on, what do we want to toot our own horn for, and what do we want for the larger Calgary region to be more noticeable from us. I'm probably going to say this next sentence a lot during the next 5-10 minutes. Is one of the big things we heard is for Strathmore to be more regionally significant. That in the Calgary area, we are competing with a lot of other municipalities that are doing a lot of work to be more significant. They're on radio stations, they're on ads, and there's some really great work that Alexander Ross is doing to improve that for the town and to move us forward. But that's one of the key messages, is that the town really needs to be more regionally significant for people to know what we have, want to come out here, experience our events, and think of maybe moving here. So the key advantage is that Strathmore is a complete community. We have people who live here, work, shop, and play. We're not seen as a bedroom community. We have a great self-identity. We're proud, and we have residents who can live day to day. They're not forced to drive into Calgary. We have great recreational events, and our housing is quite affordable, really, compared to many other areas. So that's a great advantage as we look to how to compete with some of the areas. We're a place for all ages. We have very different services. We have great school systems. We've got a hospital, obviously, that can take care of everyone. But when people grow older, and the elderly always look for better health care to kind of support them. The demographic analysis, which I believe that HOK did talk about, was there is a bit of a gap between the 20 to 40-year-olds. So people who are leaving the town for post-secondary education and then maybe finding jobs in Calgary and maybe not returning. So really part of our challenge is how do we keep more people in town? Those are the people that are buying the most houses, may have the most kind of money to spend, going through the biggest changes in their lives that lead to different housing choices and maybe to move. So, so that's something to keep in mind. We're a very well connected town. Being in the proximity of Highway 1 is amazing. We've got great kind of intermodal trading routes, good access to the airport, very strong regional retail. We have a much larger catchment area than our population actually suggests. So we have to get that across to major large format retailers who sometimes have a minimum population that they would think of moving to, and they just look at the census and they say, well, this is a town of 13,000, far too small. Reality, as it said, it's closer to 25 to 30, so we need to get that message across. And just going back to the healthcare, that's a major attraction for many people, and especially a growing seniors population and the baby boomer generation as to where they want to move, where they want to downsize and have access to health care. So the 4 critical emerging opportunities, we've kind of got to just basically number them. So one was community recreation and culture, and that just leads to just obviously saying that a strong identity really helps to facilitate social cohesion and really helps to promote the town. So when people are moving to Calgary or looking to downsize or looking to move, that if they're doing some research or driving to town, having a strong sense of identity really helps to draw people in. Commerce, industry, and employment. We basically said that a diversified economy is a resilient economy. So we really have to look at how to diversify some of the strengths we have in terms of agribusiness and looking at some synergies and opportunities and how to build on that. And I just stumbled upon this picture that I thought was quite relevant to the town. I thought that was kind of neat. Housing and development. So, we want to make sure that we have a strong continuum of housing that meets people throughout their lives and a diverse transportation network. That's really a lot of feedback came in terms of our paths and open spaces, trails. We want to be a town that's well connected and serves people in a variety of transportation, whatever they want to do. And the last one is also governance. So really, success really results from how we as a town work with our stakeholders and our citizens, that we need to continue collaborating with the developing industry and real estate builders, working with them if there's any major policy changes and if there's major things like, we've talked about in the past issues of stormwater and things like that, really that there are solutions to be found when we work together, and it's not just the town sort of imposing rules or regulations, that we're open and transparent. And just a quick segue here, that we actually held a stormwater management workshop with the developers a couple of months ago. So they were really appreciative of that, and it was really good opportunity to have some really great conversation and build relationships. So from those 4 key opportunities, we hosted an event last month. It was very well attended. We had over 70 people come, very diverse crowd. So I've just listed some of the main groups there. So as you can tell, we had a wide range from the real estate development groups all the way to businesses in town, the WID, Marigold Library, school division, which I did not list there. But yeah, it was a really well attended event, very rich conversation because of the very diverse people there. Just some quick pictures. So the format of the event was we had 4 facilitators who went around the room and basically spoke about the 4 emerging opportunities. And there's a handout in the report which you can see about the different questions we asked and some of the feedback. And we were also fortunate that Brett Wilson came, which was really great. He was a very key participant in the event. He said some really great concluding remarks, really great encouragement to the town. So it was nice to have someone of that stature, so to speak, come out to an event. So I'm not going to go through every question and answer, so that is in your report, but I just wanted to pull out the key guiding principles from the emerging opportunities and the questions that we asked. So going back to the emerging opportunity number 1, which is around community recreation and culture. So one of the key guiding principles is really for the town to establish and market a unique identity. There was thoughts that, we have a lot of different identities, and there's comments about our logo that doesn't really reflect who we are today, and that's really important as we look to distinguish ourselves from other bedroom communities. And again, being that presence in the Calgary region and having a strong marketing identity. Great comments about the town's amenities, as I said, when we walked through that, all the great things we have. But again, we to really get out there to the Calgary region and wave our flag, toot our horn, say we've got these great amenities. And the Stampede came up many a time. I have friends in Calgary who've lived in Calgary all their lives, no idea that the town had a Stampede. So, as I said, based upon personal experience and real life experience, is that I just think we have to do a much better job. And we know that the Ag Society does run it. It's not a quote unquote town event, but I think there's a lot of opportunities for the town to leverage. And some of the next points are to really capitalize on synergies, and for us to, because that just goes hand in hand. We have to do our job as well as a town to really. And we spoke a lot about the downtown and the culture, and I guess more of the commercial. And this was a really neat statement that kind of came up, in which I thought, there's lots of great opportunities to market this and logo this, but it was kind of this Strathmore after dinner. So there were quite a few kind of comments to say there's nothing really much to do in this town after dinner, really, whether it's right or wrong, or there's incorrect perception. So there was some thought that the downtown, lots of businesses close after 6 o'clock. So there's people who maybe want to go out for dinner or go downtown for a movie, and then they come out and everything's closed. So I think can really, and so that goes to trying to get some better uses or more strong anchors downtown that will keep people, that encourage that day and night activity. Town hall is obviously going to help a ton during the day. There's going to be a lot more people, obviously, who work at the town hall who will be there, people coming to visit. But that evening, after dinner activities and draws are going to be really important for the downtown as we move forward to maintain that day-night vibrancy. Commerce, industry, and employment. So one thing that came up was a lot to really develop and promote community synergy. So there's a lot of talk about that farm to table type initiatives. Obviously we were at the brewery. The owner made a great, he spoke at the end just about all the kind of family history, and it just reiterated that it's a great opportunity we have in town, not just for like brewery, but to really encourage a farm to table, whether it be food, drinks, and that's the agricultural and food support we have. So that may be part of our business attraction, business niche, and something we can market. Foster business-friendly environment. So we want to be open to businesses. We want to make sure we have enough land uses and areas commercially for businesses to come in. We had a question actually at the event where a local business asked, really, what's the town doing to help the small businesses downtown who don't have anyone coming by and who, it's dead downtown, so we spoke about the first step was the town hall and the anchor there to help revitalize the downtown, and the next step is doing some downtown redevelopment work and ensuring that there are those uses, and we really go out to get some more of those day-night anchors. And the third principle was there was a lot of talk about businesses potentially wanting to relocate from the city due to taxes and other kind of issues. I said there's a big draw in town in terms of access and intermodal. So really to go out there and compete for businesses that may be looking to locate and potentially offer some incentives and other draws along with that. The third one was housing and also development. So again, really positive most of the conversation, but there were people always said, that they're looking for different housing choice that helps to encourage different levels of affordability. Issues like secondary suites, micro homes came up, very well supported. So the value for money and the affordability was a really key point. Was people can come to the town, find a more affordable place to live, and with all the great services and amenities we have as a town, there's some great value for money that comes with it. So really focusing on that. Make Strathmore a more beautiful and memorable town. So lots of conversation about the urban design, the downtown, really trying to create a sense of place and a sense of community, really focusing on our major gateways into the town. And I know that we are part of the downtown workshop we'll be doing in September. We'll be looking at that. But yeah, to really say that as the downtown redevelops and kind of like other areas that we do need to focus on the urban design side and landscaping. Create a town attractive to business. Again, that sort of leads with the last opportunity. I won't go too much into that. And there was talk, again, just larger transportation choice. Just our pathways, our open space plans. Cameron's going to get into that a little bit more, so I won't ruin it, but we've really heard that key point is that we have great destinations in town with the WID Canal, with the downtown, and we just need to make sure that we fill in the holes and improve some of those pathway linkages. And the final one is governance. So this really speaks to a lot of increasing levels of transparency between citizens and the town and also developers of the town. So if there's any major changes that are being done with town policy or requirements, those are communicated through really diverse avenues. Foster and nurture proactive relationships with stakeholders. So, we're committing to hold this type of event on an annual basis. There were thoughts that the town could put out sort of a semi-annual newsletter in terms of any kind of major updates. If there's anything, major changes of the requirement, really commit to a high standard about how that gets communicated. And so just really key words in terms of collaboration. And the last point, when we started to talk a little bit about development incentives, there are lots of things you can do. There's pros and cons to that, so there were some suggestions that the town lease land upfront, be able to attract businesses, lower property tax, things like that, but there's always pros and cons, those things we'll have to do. But, the last one, again, speaks to that, again, increasing the significance in our work. It's just bold marketing is, we have so many great things and there's so much low-hanging fruit. Let's be bold as a town to show those off. So I'm going to turn it over to Cameron now, who had a really fun session. He engaged with some grade 6, so these are the future Strathmorians who will be living, we hope, the MDP plan when they actually grow up. So I'll turn it over to Cameron to give a quick update.
Thank you, Justin.
Yeah, thank you, Justin and Council Mayor Fuel. In preparation for the upcoming municipal development plan update, staff thought it would be a really cool opportunity to engage with grade 6 students to gauge their feedback and hear from them what they thought Strathmore should do to grow moving forward, what they thought we should become. When you think about a municipal development plan, you ask yourself, who are we actually planning for? And because these plans are such long-range documents, by the time grade 6s are 19, 20, that's when this plan will start to show its true colors. And so it's interesting that these students will eventually play a role in this plan. We do have a few pictures just to show the engagement sessions that we partook in here. So in total, we were able to engage with 80 students. Roughly 30 of those students came from George Freeman Public School, and the balance of that 80, so around 50, came from Wheatland Elementary. We began by delivering a planning lesson to the students where we spoke about what a municipal development plan is, what a planner does, why we engage students, the importance of that, what the students can get out of this session. That was about 10 minutes or so. We then moved into a community survey. So we asked the students to fill out this survey. We asked questions such as what are the 3 most important problems facing Strathmore? If you were mayor for a day, what would you change about Strathmore, that kind of thing. We got a pretty wide range of answers, and I was actually quite impressed with what the students came up with. Following the survey, we then conducted a 30 to 40-minute site visit. So the image in the top right there shows the students in Edgefield looking at a home being built. The planning lesson, we tried to show them what we were teaching them in the lesson. So we looked at storm management, different planning, urban design principles, grading, lot stripping, that kind of thing. So it was kind of cool to get the kids outside. It was also a strategic move on our part. It was the 3rd last day of school, so got the kids outside. They were excited for that. Once we were finished with the site visit, we then came back inside and broke the students out into groups of 3 or 4. We handed each group a piece of chart paper with a bunch of markers, and we just said, go, we want you to design your own city. I didn't really give them any direction. I just wanted to see where their brains went. So the image in the bottom right shows one of the examples. And then we gave them about 20 minutes for that exercise. Following that, each group then presented their city to the class. So there's an image in the bottom left there. It was quite interesting to look at the results of the survey and from the design exercise. What we did was we compiled all of that, and I tried to make sense of the design exercise, and I tried to summarize that. The list here in bullets, these are the most common themes that came out of the session. So the first one would be more housing so people can move to town. There aren't enough commercial options, particularly in the northwest portion of the town. More restaurants and local businesses. Pathways and sidewalks for kids to bike to school came up quite a bit, so they're looking for that alternative mode of transportation. Very impressed with that. One student actually brought up that we should strive for an equitable public transit system that is based off of wage. So you pay based on what you earn every year. So I was quite impressed with that response. More trees and larger parks with a more variety of programming for students. More recreational options, so the idea of an outdoor pool and a BMX park came up. A new hockey arena and actually a beach at Kinsman Park. Now I know some of these ideas are more feasible than others, but when you break it down, we came to 2 different guiding principles. The first being ensuring complete communities with varied recreational options, and the second being providing well-connected, pedestrian-friendly, supportive networks.
Thanks, Cameron. So yeah, no, it was great to go out and had a lot of fun, Cameron, with that. So I said, and we'd love to bring back the kids and the students to maybe review our final draft or to give some comments themselves and add some of the pictures into our final plan. So moving on from that, so we're trying to pull out, as I said, the key guiding principles to really help inform the MDP. The last attachment in the report is a draft MDP table of contents. So, as we said, we've talked a lot about complete town. We really want to focus on our town to live, work, shop, play, and learn. So the policies and to support that. We've talked about a prosperous town, so this goes really hand in hand with economic development. Tourism, helping to increase business investment. And active and healthy town. We want to improve our pathways and the open space plan, and really working with the recreational master plan as well to ensure that some of the key high-level policies will be included. A multimodal town, which really our road network and the transportation network, so the way we build our streets and the new areas, or we look at streets, we really focus on the pedestrian realm. We focus on bikes and pathways and really encouraging people to take different modes of transportation to different parts of the town. A historical and attractive town, so we heard that we obviously have a lot of great history in the town that we want to capitalize on and recognize and respect, and using that as part of a larger attempt to have some key and strong design principles. So whether it's linked to the historical side of the town or whether it's a different niche we're looking at, but really trying to tie in the branding or the urban design to who we are as a town. A sustainable town, so David, who came and presented here before, last week, I believe you were here when he talked about things like solar panels and all that, and of course, we're excited for the Solarcraft project, so we really see it's an opportunity to build on that. We've shown as a town that we are open to renewable energy and to being progressive, so really looking at some better policies for that and wetland preservation. And as we've touched on this a little bit, we are looking to do a downtown redevelopment plan as part of the downtown design guidelines, and so really helping to improve the wayfinding in the public realm, land use, improving connectivity to the downtown. So that we see as a kind of a separate redevelopment exercise, but one that's important, especially with the town hall going in to really set the foundation in place for the next 5 to 10 years to take advantage of that large investment. So just going back to the timeline again, so I said we will love to continue working with council in whatever way you see best. We want to include you, and so from now until October or September, if you'd like any one-to-one more focused workshops or as part of your retreats, we'll be happy to do that. We're committing to coming back with feedback. We are going to start more of an online presence. We do have an MDP site on our webpage, so we're going to start to direct people to that. We're going to have some more surveys online, attending special events or just going downtown one day and just really meeting people where they are, and then really coming back in November and also December to look to report back on those findings. So we're happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you to you and Cameron, Justin, for your report, and we'll take questions or comments from council. Councillor Peterson.
Thank you, Your Worship, and I really appreciate the depth of this report, and I hear you saying over and over that we don't have an identity, and that this is something that needs to come through, and yet it's not front and center in the actual articulation. And I worry because I've been in this community for longer than you've been alive, and I've seen what happens when we go on this disparate journey. We become the geranium capital of Canada, and other things that have not identified us. And I just can't highlight enough how critical it is that we somehow get around that, and sooner rather than later. And I know that there's good work being done everywhere, and I know that it's happening. But if we, it's that old saying, if you don't know where you're going, any road will get you there. And if we, I don't think that we can do this and end up with an identity. We've done that many times, and it's not been useful. And so I think we have to look at it. And I know that identities change. And I heard Roger Brooks say, if you have the word quality in your logo, you're doing something very wrong. And I heard Doug Griffiths say, if that I think he said something about if your community is going to have an identity, it has to be able to articulate its soul, because that's what brings people to a community to live, and all of those things. And so I know that we're doing it in many ways and in many places. With the MDP, we do it in the downtown revitalization, we do it on the tourism committee, and it's disparate, and we need to somehow do it better. And I don't know how we bring it in here, but I do think that it needs to be more specific.
Yeah.
And very focused somehow. And I know Thomas has a lot of input on that, and I'd appreciate hearing it.
Yeah, if I may, Your Worship and Councillor Peterson. So we are very focused on this, and it's going to revolve around a visioning exercise that will be really two components led by council and also a community, right? Those are the two pieces. We have looked at different consultants and vendors and actually are shortlisted and currently in discussion with a vendor, which I realize we're public here, so I can update council further on that. But the intent here is that in September, we are going to start that process, and it will be about establishing the vision. And from the vision, what are we going to be? That's going to start to drive and inform so many of the other initiatives. And I know that Justin has been very intentional about the design of the MDP in such a way that he can insert.
I see it everywhere.
Yeah.
I do.
And you picked up on kind of the missing piece, and that missing piece is coming in September, or we'll begin in September with the final deliverable by the end of this year, and it will inform again the MDP, our economic development strategy, our branding, and so many other initiatives.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Deputy Mayor Montgomery.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yeah, thank you very much for your work on this. You guys have done a bang-up job, so thank you for that. So I guess, yeah, a couple questions. So one thing that I guess I was wondering about is planning for certain areas, for certain industries. And do you guys have any ideas in that, like about like what industries we could possibly plan for in what areas in town here?
Through the chair, I wouldn't say any specific areas in town. We have had some conversations with developers looking to move their lands forward. Now we're trying to steer them towards in terms of what we think is feasible and what we believe is market realistic, just to ensure they get to achieve success. So really depending on the feedback or how open they are to accept those would be the areas. In terms of the industries, I think guys were talking about those agribusiness and that farm to table type initiatives and renewable foods or sustainable food production. Those type of things really came out a lot as part of our kind of conversation. Is this is Strathmore is a rural area. We have a lot of strong history in farming roots, and there's a lot of great, exciting type initiatives happening in that area, and technological advances as well. So it's not just farming; it's also kind of research and also development and all that. So we would have to do some more research into how feasible those industries are and whether they are looking to move. Cannabis came up a lot. It's a different type of farming. But really cannabis production, and we'll be ramping up maybe as more licenses are being given over the next couple of years. So, that was also brought up, and I think just linking the job sector or the post-secondary opportunities in the town, or looking at that with then the individuals once they get trained here with the jobs here. So that's a strong link we want to look at. Is it's not just the industry. Can we also look at post-secondary training opportunities so we can have teenagers or students move to the town, get trained, and then find a job here, stay, raise a family, etc. So it's a kind of a long-term game that we have to look at. And so yeah, long answer short. I think there's still a bunch of research to be done in terms of what's the most feasible, but I think there's some opportunities out there.
Okay. And I know this is a bit outside your purview, let's say, but so it struck me that we could probably draw a lot of people out of the downtown, like travelers, if we advertised the splash park on the highway. Like there'd be a lot of people that would probably stop and like bring their kids there or whatever, and then like head downtown after that. So I think that would be something that we should look at. And then the other option, I guess, or the other thing we could do is I noticed the other day when I was driving into town that, you hit town and there's like the signs that advertise a few businesses there. But it's kind of lost almost like in a clutter when you first come into town. And I was thinking like maybe if there was, signage a bit farther out of town, It would give people a chance to, I guess, think about it before they actually hit the town. And the other question I had is, so I guess I have two questions here, but so with regards to a suggestion 4.4, what would qualify as business-based decision-making?
Sorry, which part of the report is that?
That's on the recommendations.
Page?
On page 29, or page 53 of 104, sorry.
4 point what, sorry?
4.4.
Commerce, applied business basically to attract investment, build confidence in the marketplace. So that was a recommendation from HOK. Applied business, that's a good question. Applied business-based decision making. So I think they're talking about potentially just working with businesses or to be able to react to business requirements or business demands in terms of how we attract investment and build confidence. So I guess going out to the business industry to do further research on what they're looking for in terms of how to attract. I know that Thomas's group has just done a business survey, which I'm sure they'll be coming to council with. So I think learning there are about 8 key factors that came from that. So really looking at what those factors are, what businesses are looking for, and really capitalizing on those and ensuring we're actually providing them. So, sorry, that's my best.
I think Councillor Peterson just wanted to weigh in on
Answer to
yours,
that.
Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Justin, one of the things that, to the people that had been at your session, that I talked to afterwards, said that one of the things that really occurred to them relevant to the whole idea of applying business-based decision-making was that collaboration with the county, who has done a very good job in development in terms of, if you look west of Strathmore, and you look in the last few years, the 14 businesses that I can count from the highway, this would be a great collaboration if we had some idea of who those businesses were and could market to them in terms of housing in the community. Because we haven't done that, and that's a lot of people that are employed in those areas. And so I think that's kind of
Okay,
connected
yeah.
to what you're talking
No,
about.
that's
But
great. Thank
and then also you mentioned about the leasing the land as well.
Yeah,
I guess
that's
that's
great, thank you.
one of them too. But
Thank you, Councillor Peterson. Deputy Mayor Bauer again. Deputy Mayor Montgomery again.
Thank you. So my final question just has to do with secondary suites, and I'm just wondering, I guess, is that on our horizon?
Through the chair, yes, absolutely. I mean, a big part of the MDP and the housing choice and spectrum and helping people with the affordability. So in terms of when you buy a house now, you can rent the suite to help you with your mortgage. It's an opportunity for your mother-in-law to live there, or mother, or your kids as they go. So, my experience, it's what I call invisible density. It has very small or limited impact to a community. If it's done well, it's very seamless. We as the planning department and myself would strongly encourage that, and we will bring that up to the community as we move forward. We have had a few developers who are, I would say, challenged right now to sell homes, who have come to us and have approached that subject with us. So you may be hearing something more about that in September moving forward. But absolutely, we want to make it as easy for people to own a home. We want to have as many housing options for people in the town, and that's a big thing what we heard. So.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Montgomery. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you very much for your report, Justin, and Cameron. I'm sorry, I just had a... I don't have a lot of experience with municipal development plans, but I'm wondering if I'm either thinking of something that shouldn't be included in this, or perhaps a blind spot. But I've had a lot of people tell me that they came out to Strathmore because it's safe. Because rather than deal with the crime that's in Calgary, or that they think that we're a safe community, and our EMS, our fire department, our ambulances, they can get to our people faster, and that really makes a difference to them. So is that something that we can add to this, or is that an area that is typically in such a document?
Through the chair, that's a great point. I mean, it talks about that quality of life, and the going back to the value for money sort of thing, is that you get all these great, you get a safer community, you get a richer community in terms of lifestyle. There's people that can drive home from work for lunch. My staff do that. There's not many people like in Calgary or places that can just drive home for lunch, take their dog out. So Ryan takes his dog out, right? So So safety absolutely is a factor for quality of life. It's now where to include it in the MDP or have it as a guiding principle, or it may be better suited as a marketing tool, or some of those key messages as we look at how we quote unquote brand ourselves or identify. But we can certainly look into that, because I think it's another important factor on how we can encourage growth and why people look to move, as you said. So
Thank you for allowing my feedback.
Great point.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. Just before I go back to Deputy, I'm having a really tough time. Just before I go back to you, Councillor Peterson, I just had a couple of things, and one was the idea of partnering with different groups is really important. And I got a phone call from Golden Hills Superintendent Bevan Davern, who explained, and this is a conservative amount because I can't remember the exact number, but he said over 10 families came and interviewed and consulted on possibly relocating here and wanted to check out the schools. And they chose Airdrie and Chestermere over us. And the problem is we have to get it out there that our school system, both the separate and the public, is really good. And it's like you're saying, Councillor Bauer, it's a safe place. And I don't know what our budget is, Mr. Thackeray. I want to bring you into this. I don't know what our budget is for advertising at this point. But back to school is right now. Absolutely. And is there a chance that we can aggressively go after the radio market? And I'm not just saying Virgin Radio, because that's a younger market, but there are radio stations like 97.7 which advertises no repeat work listening at the office. So that would bring a lot of families information as far as our schools in our town. We obviously have 104.5. The other thing is Councillor Corbeil has convinced me over the last year and a half that we're a real sports town, a hockey town, and the NHL season goes from basically September to, sadly for us this year, April. But that's a long season, and we could be also advertising on 960 The Fan. And we could hit, there might be one or two families even that decide, hey, there's enough time to check out Strathmore for the new school year that's coming. So I don't know what our budget is, but maybe there's something we can do to blitz something in the next little while. The other thing I wanted to mention, and I want to promote that this is a family town. I like your comment too, Councillor Peterson, about the motto. I love our logo, the Strathmore logo. I'm one of those guys who likes the logo. I would love to have seen, or maybe there's still a chance to add a rodeo component to it. But that seems to capture, and I wanted to just tell those of you who are here and maybe possibly still listening at home, that I was interviewed today by CBC regarding the efforts we're doing to try to bring Siksika Nation in the town of Strathmore closer. And the two ladies from Toronto, out of the blue, without me asking or questioning them, they just mentioned things about the town that they noticed. And one of the things was they were really impressed with the downtown attractiveness. They really thought the downtown was beautiful with the trees and they knew that something had been done. They hadn't heard, they hadn't been around, but they knew something was different. They thought the attractiveness of downtown was noticeable. Second thing, they mentioned three things. Second thing, which is good for the people who've been on council before, they mentioned the church downtown and what a cute little church it was and how it stood out to them. Obviously, that train may have gone down the track, but perhaps. The third thing they mentioned was the station, restaurant and pub, and they were blown away by the train theme, and that's on our logo too. So these are people who come from a huge metropolitan area and who've noticed things and commented on things without me prompting them. So those are things that we could possibly keep in mind too as we move forward. But I'm really, really interested if there's any way, and I know municipalities move at a slower pace, but if we could try something, anything, to try to capture some families thinking about starting a new school year somewhere else. Maybe their child has had trouble. Maybe their child has had some bullying issues. I talked to one family who moved out here. Yesterday, I was talking at Slow Pitch to a lady who specifically moved out because her daughter had been bullied at her school and came out here, and her 3 daughters found it to be a safe and successful relocation. So that kind of thing, if we can hit those families, that would be awesome. Mr. Thackeray, and then I'll go to Councillor Peterson, sorry.
Oh, Your Worship, I just wanted to tell a story. Justin, I'm remiss in not acknowledging the amount of quality that you and Cameron and all your people have put into this. And when I was in Northeast Africa a little while ago, one of the people on a coastal village said that they had a quote, and they said, in a town where people build their ships, build the ships from which their children will fight and fish, you never have to worry about quality.
That's true.
And I think that's what we're about, when we nurture these children that you dealt with so effectively. It made me think of that in this community, and I see that throughout the work that you've done, and I really appreciate it.
I just wanted to follow up on the sports comment. So I'm just on page 58. That was one of the town identity. I have a friend actually. They just moved here last year. They have 3 boys. They said it's the best place if they want to. They have dreams. All their boys want to be like the NHL as any lesson with boys. But they kind of came out here because of the ice time and schools. So I said that family friendliness, and I think we talked way back when. It'd be great to get that hometown hockey. From the kind of CBC towards looking to go to great little towns, so that's when you bring a lot of families out to that, and, they get a chance to experience the town. So, those are the type of big events that we should be.
Thank you. And when I made my comments, I was brainstorming and I thought of that. But I really want to show my appreciation for what you gentlemen and your staffs have done to go and meet with the grade 6s, to do the event with the businesses and the people in town is awesome. We've got to solicit that public input. That's really good. James.
Thank you, Your Worship. If it's council's wish, we could do something over the next 3 to 4 weeks, and we could do some radio spots. I can't promise you exactly what it would be, but if that's a priority, we could do some. And if you leave it with us, we'll work on that and see if we can get something going in the next week or 2.
Council, how do you feel? Think it's worth a shot?
We have.
Councillor Peterson?
Your Worship, I think if you're going to do it in the line that you were talking about, it would be really good to do it in consultation with the school divisions. They'd be so thrilled, yeah.
And really, that's an excellent point, because Bevan Davern, the superintendent, is champing at the bit, if I follow the Western theme. He really wants to get chomping at the bit. See, I've never been on a horse, so I don't know. Which isn't a good thing to admit in a Western town. But he's really, really interested in working and partnering with the town to market this town and to get more people living here and moving here and our school systems are one of our strengths. So I think that's great. Exactly. You're absolutely correct, Councillor Peterson. But once again, thank you, gentlemen, for what you've done here.
Thank you.
And James, if we're kicking around radio stations, we talked about 97.7 and 104.5, 960 The Fan. Deputy Mayor Montgomery also mentioned 770 is a talk radio station that may also attract an older crowd if we're looking to relocate people. If you can only pick up 1 or 2. Okay. Well, I guess we'll leave that to admin. You guys are, Thomas, you folks know. Thank you. All right. That brings us to item 6.4, And we have a lot of administrative inquiry responses. And so Jen and I were discussing this as a kind of a logistics point of view and how to get it to go smoothly and seamlessly. And what we're wondering is, you've all received them in writing, and there is a package here for our many, many spectators in the audience tonight. And if you have a question or a comment on a specific admin inquiry response, maybe that would be the way to progress. And then we could only, like, there may be some that we don't need to discuss at all. So that might be a good way to progress. Councillor Sobel.
Thank you. I'm good with that, Your Worship, and I specifically would like to inquire in regards to administrative inquiry pertaining to Kinsman Lake and parking. So I first of all, I apologize. I had in my inquiry, I had 11 o'clock as the official closing time for Kinsman, and it's not, it's midnight. There's a sign inside the park that specifically indicates it's 12 o'clock where the park closes. But my question was not really in regards to the park, it was in regards to the parking lot, which is where the problem is. If I can recall my experience as a peace officer, there's very little you can do in a parking lot where people are parked and there's no law that says you can't park there. So my question was actually, why are we not installing no parking signs after midnight in that parking lot, which would then give power to the peace officers, both RCMP and our bylaw, to ask vehicles to move. And the reason I go down that road, of course, is it continues to be an issue. We have complaints there. The garbage that is generated from the vehicles that are parked there onto our parking lot is no less than, it's just sad. It's incredible. And I know we did at one point have staff going in the morning to clean it up, but it's to that extent. So I guess that was, and the response you gave, I appreciate. It was not your fault that you went that way. I read over my inquiry and I didn't word it very well. So it was, mine was focused specifically on the parking lot.
Thank you, Councillor Sobel.
Your Worship, through to Councillor Sobel. Thank you for the comment, and it wasn't our intention to correct the information. It was our intention to share. But also, we believe that the parking lot is intended for park use, and therefore it's park. And so if there's no access to the park after midnight, there should be nobody in the parking lot. That's the rationale that we're using in our discussions with the RCMP, who are supporting us in this initiative. And it's not, it's garbage and it's noise and it's the concerns of Lambert Village. There's a number of things that we need to work together with our partners, enforcement partners, to be able to address. And me not being a big fan of signs, but understanding the intent and the purpose of them, I'll have this conversation with our sergeant to see if that will help, not just the our municipal enforcement members, but also the RCMP members who are supporting us in this initiative.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Trent. Deputy Mayor Montgomery.
So I have a question about this bylaw. I didn't have enough reading material, so I decided to read this one as well. And it's just to do with, like, so, and I might have missed it, but, so in here, it defines, a pathway as a park, and so that obviously would mean that you can't walk on a pathway after midnight. Is there a part in here, like, where it's, where the CAO has kind of excluded that particular part? I didn't see it.
No, through the chair again to Deputy Mayor Montgomery. I'm trying to impress you with the fact that I got that right the first time. This is definitely a bylaw that has to escalate in our redrafts. It's 12 years old. Even some of the definitions, as I was looking through, it's even more egregious when you look at the fees and the penalties and the lack of clarity at the back of the bylaw, that we need to look at those things and better define. Because I mean, a sidewalk is a sidewalk and a pathway is a pathway, but a pathway in a park is prohibited after midnight, but a pathway not in a park is not prohibited if it attaches to a sidewalk. Okay, there's a lot of challenges with this bylaw as it stands. Not enforcement challenges. We believe that there's some things that we can still enforce. But it definitely is one of the ones that we need to look at sooner than later to bring back to council.
I was hoping you weren't going to say that, but that's fine. Thanks, Chad.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Montgomery. Councillor Bauer.
Thank you, Your Worship. I would like to direct this to Chief West, if I could, please. So regarding the bylaw, what I'm seeing as being the difficulty with vehicles being in Kinsman Park in the parking lot is that there's still people inside of them. And that's the problem. If people were being responsible and leaving their cars in the parking lot overnight and going home because they've been, drinking and they don't want to drive home, I have no problem with vehicles being left in the parking lot. It's the people that are in them after 12 o'clock that are causing the problem. And I don't see anywhere in here that a vehicle in a park should not be in park with person in it. Yeah. And that's kind of what I would like to see almost added here, so that we can either ticket or have RCMP called or something, so we have some leverage.
Thank you. I will make note of that.
Is that possible?
I don't know.
Okay.
That might be something that would require comparatives with other municipalities or legal input or feedback.
Okay, thank you very much.
But definitely comparatives first.
Thank you, Councillor Bauer. So I believe we have no other comments or questions about individual. Mel?
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. Just a correction on page 95 of 104, the last item. Phrase was missed in preparation, and it should read, conducted during normal business hours. That's the last bullet point, referring to staff efficiency.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Sobel?
Thank you.
Oh, Mel, I think you have to shut yours off. Thank you very much. Looks like it's Deputy Mayor Montgomery first, and then Councillor Sobel.
Oh, boy. So thanks for this, Mal. So am I understanding this, I guess, correctly, that per meeting, it's just over $5,000 that, like, when you add the 1630 plus the 3440, am I doing that correctly? Okay. And so at about, let's say, 30 meetings a year, we'd like just over 150,000? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you. If I could follow Deputy Mayor Montgomery's question on that. Mel, if council eventually were to go to daytime meetings, how would you calculate time lost from the regular workday by staff who would be coming to council meetings? Like, I know it would fit their work schedule, but how would you be able to calculate if they're having to take time away from a file they're working on because they're spending an hour and a half in a council meeting?
I think there would be some efficiency in that. They wouldn't necessarily have to attend the whole meeting. They could attend a portion of a meeting as required, instead of being here perhaps for 2 or 3 hours. They would attend the part that was necessary to conduct whatever business they were talking to council on.
Okay, thank you very much. Ryan?
I was just going to follow up from what Mr. Teedy was saying. I've worked in a number of municipalities with daytime councils, and as staff, you just come in for the item before your presentation, and so you're really only in there for 5 minutes, the tail end of the presentation before you, and then you do your presentation and you're out. Except for directors, they're there the whole time. But yeah, from a staff perspective, it's not a big interruption.
So how would you know? Would someone send for you, or you? Okay, thank you.
The corporate officer texts you.
Oh, okay, gotcha. Thank you very much. Councillor Sobel, did you have a comment still?
Actually, I have two questions to administration, Your Worship, and they are in regards to administrative inquiries, and I hate to put anybody on the spot there, but I don't have a response for a March 6th, 2019 response for aquatics and swimming lesson registrations. And that was a question as to whether or not a short window could be afforded Strathmore and County residents to register for swimming lessons, et cetera, prior to opening it up to the general public. And I don't need an answer now, but I can leave that with administration for a future response, or give you a copy of this this administrative require. And the other one is July 4th, 2018. And this is, the note I have on this is that it's being worked on. It's a Citizens on Patrol question where my question is whether administration can provide information that pertains to the current status of the program and what, if any, plans exist to resurrect and revitalize it. And perhaps Chief West might have.
Do you want to respond?
I can.
Okay.
I can answer
Yep.
that question. And, so I apologize. I had thought that we'd responded to that in the past in one of when we were answering to the admin inquiries. So,
May not
but
have
that's
been
okay. Yeah, exactly. Citizens on Patrol have become more active. They've received their provincial status as a group. And actually, that is one of the organizations that we're looking at to support in the auction, after the auction this Saturday, where we're going to be selling off the unrecovered or non-returnable. No, I better retract that non-returnable, because that might sound like there might be weapons for sale or something like that, and that's not the case. But that's one of the organizations that we're looking at supporting, because they have been very active. We've been loaning them radios until such time as the RCMP switched to AFRAX, so that they could communicate. And I can think of at least 6 times where they've been out.
So I'll just yell this. Is there anything we can do as a council to support them, or? I just find them a very valuable group, and I don't know what their numbers are like, but I know they need numbers. They always need volunteers, because the more volunteers our COP program have, then the less shifts they have to work per month. And that's how you tire your volunteers out, is you work them to death. So if there's anything, I encourage them and yourself and anyone else to come to us if there's anything we can do, and I don't know what it is, but I really want to encourage that program as much as possible.
Thank you, through the chair to Councillor Sobel. Thank you. Michael's active on the committee with the RCMP member that's been assigned the file, and we will extend that on to them, that there might be further opportunities for more active support. I know we've advertised for them a couple of times through our communications branch about Citizens on Patrol, so we'll continue to do that, and there may be something that they think of that might help them out.
I'm sorry, one last question. Do they have an RCMP coordinator assigned to COP?
Yes. Yeah, in the meetings that I was going to before Michael, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, and I think Mark was going to jump in on something.
Yes, through the chair to Council Sobel regarding your inquiry about swimming lessons availability.
Yes.
Our records show that there was a response back to council on May 8th.
Of? May. Oh. Thank you.
You might not have been here.
Welcome, maybe you weren't
Maybe I
here.
wasn't.
Yep.
Yeah, it was gone, and it was in Toronto.
That's the one.
Deputy Mayor Montgomery.
James, did you want to say something first? Oh, okay. So I guess my question is just to do with what is going to be the process going forward with like the admin inquiries, as far as, because I asked if you guys could I guess keep a running list for us, and then maybe even like a timeline of when they could be answered or something like that.
through the chair, we're actually actively working on a new procedure for internal staff. So we have some new deadlines and some new technology in eScribe that we want to use, so everybody gets notified when they're supposed to be done. But we need a procedure to front that. So as I mentioned before, the process we've just been using a spreadsheet and just entering the information manually and trying to keep track, and that doesn't really work because every time it changes or we get a new version or somebody else goes in, it can be really, really hard to follow. So it's got bigger than we anticipated, so we feel good that we'll have some new stuff come September, so thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Montgomery. Councillor Corbeil. Jennifer.
Thank
Sorry.
you. I just wanted to add it on to James's comments that council will receive all admin inquiry responses in writing from this point forward, so it's a little bit easier to keep track of what's been responded to and what hasn't, and that way council can go back and look at things if they haven't been here for a verbal response. So.
Thank you very much. That's a great idea. Councillor Corbeil.
Thank you, Your Worship. Quick little inquiry or whatever. The one that said that we were going to get hard copies of the updated organizational chart, including names, this week. We haven't got that yet, though, have we? Okay.
We have a couple things we're working on.
Okay. I was just making sure I didn't miss it.
Okay, thank you. So I believe we've gone through all the admin inquiry questions, and at this time, I think, Jennifer, if I'm not incorrect, because I get confused, are we looking for a motion to come out of the Committee of the Whole? Thank you. So looking for that, kids? Thank you, Councillor
I will
Sobel.
make that motion, Your Worship, that we come out of Committee of the Whole.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sobel. And are you happy I called you a kid? Okay, all in favor? And we're coming out of Committee of the Whole. We're back in the public session. And I believe we're going on to 6.5, which is the Regional Services Actuarial. And who will be speaking to that? Is that Mel? And oh, James, good. Thank you.
So, thank you, Your Worship. In your package, there's a notification about us approaching the county. This is based on the meeting that myself, Mayor Fuel, and the Reeve Link, and Brian, the interim CAO at the county, had a couple of weeks ago. It was a very positive meeting. Thank you again, Your Worship, for your support and hard work. We believe we have a good path forward, so we'd like to recommend that council authorize staff to start a joint procurement process up to $25,000 for a mutually agreeable third-party actuarial process with Wheatland County and this would be to review our recreation facilities and also look at emergency services, if that's agreeable with the county. But we had certainly had support for it, and I think this would be a very good, very fair process between our two parties. Thank you.
Thank you for that, James. I just wanted one quick question. So our portion possibly would be up to $25,000, and then you'll be in contact with Wheatland County? Yes. Thank you. Councillor Peterson.
I was just going to make the motion, Your Worship.
Oh, perfect.
I would move that council authorize staff to start joint procurement processes with costs not to exceed $25,000 for a mutually agreeable third-party actuarial process with Wheatland County.
Thank you, Councillor.
And Your Worship, I imagine we have to say that that would come from financial stabilization. And does it need to include the emergency services condition? I think it speaks to it anyway. Yeah, okay.
Could I ask one?
Yep.
The amount, this would be our contribution?
Yes.
But the county, if they contributed 50%, they would contribute their 25K up to, because we don't know the full cost of that process.
Right.
But
Contingent on the
so I would change that to read that council authorize staff to start a joint procurement process, cost to the town of Strathmore not to exceed $25,000 for a mutually agreeable third-party actuarial process with Wheatland County on the provision that they also match the procurement cost.
Jennifer, have you got all that? Thank you for your motion, Councillor Peterson, and being able to wordsmith it so quickly. Much appreciated. You all heard that motion. Is there any discussion on the motion, Councillor Sobel?
I have a question, Your Worship. What's the parameter of the second part of that in regards to emergency services?
Through the chair, the discussion would be around the fire and protective services, because we currently have a there's, as you know, there's a county service in our town, so we would want to at least explore that with the county, not making any commitments, we just want to have the discussion.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. So we have a motion on the floor. All in favor? And the motion is carried. And that brings us to item 6.6, the Strathmore Commons. And Thomas, you're presenting on this?
Yes, I am.
Welcome, and thank you for your patience.
No, it's just a PDF. It's always confusing that. There we go. Thank you.
Thank you, Thomas, and welcome this evening. We look forward to your report.
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. I'm really excited to be here this evening on behalf of administration to present to you the concept of Strathmore Commons. This is a vision for an opportunity-based legacy community building project, and it's reflected in a multi-nodal connection and development that connects Strathmore communities and links the core and the downtown core of Strathmore. It's going to be made up of the 5 nodes consisting of Grays Park, Lambert Park, the Municipal Building, Kinsman Park, and Centre Street Park. There are a number of details associated with each of these nodes, and I'd like to get into those details, but my ask would be that we would go in camera so that I could speak to you about those details.
Councillor Peterson.
Your Worship, I'd be happy to make the motion. I just need to reference legislative services on what section we would go into in camera. I forget, 20?
Your Worship, it was section 24.
Section 24. So, Your Worship, I'd move that we go in camera relative to section 24 of the FOIP Act, Municipal Government.
Thank you very much for that motion. You all heard the motion. All in favor? And the motion is carried. We're going in camera at 9:18, and we will resume the public portion when we come out of in camera. And welcome back to the public meeting. We're reconvening at 10:25, 10:24 if I look at the digital clock. Councillor Corbeil, did you? Yes, you buzzed in. Thank you.
I move the council give first reading on bylaw number 19-11.
Thank you very much. And as always, for a first reading, we don't have to have any discussion. So all in favor?
Should we have some discussion on the bylaw though, just for the public?
Okay, so a preamble?
Yeah.
Mel, sorry.
Thank you, Your Worship. This bylaw contains the borrowing for the two purposes. One is for the Strathmore Commons, and the second is for the utility upgrades, both water and sewer. The water and sewer costs for the interest and principal repayment are already included in the 2019 budget.
Thank you very much for that.
Should I make my motion again?
I think so.
Okay. I would move that council give first reading on bylaw number 19-11.
Thank you very much, Councillor Corbeil. You've all heard the motion. All in favor?